podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for frame rate is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This episode of Frame Rate is brought to you by Pond5, the world's stock media marketplace. If you're a media maker looking for video, photos, illustrations, music, or sound effects, After Effects templates, or even 3D models, check out Pond5. And for an exclusive 50 free stock media downloads, go to pond5.com/framerate. And by the new Squarespace. Squarespace introduces a new content management system, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. Plus, more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code FRAMERATE11.
Data is the new oil, talent is the new gold, sharing is the new currency. Freak is the new geek, geek is the new chic, weird is the new charming. Pretending to be a lesbian is the new cool, poor is the new rich, Mars the new moon. Technology is the new cigarette, paper is the new vinyl, I don't have internet, it's the new I don't have TV.
Text message is the new love letter, I miss you is the new please f*** me. Just saying is the new no offense, what is the new peace? And following is the new different thing, privacy is the new luxury, 4 a.m. is the new midnight, 1,000 years the new what you.
Pirates is the new radio, yogurt is the new ice cream.
It's Frame Rate! Welcome to Frame Rate, episode 102. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining us today is Scott Wilkinson.
Hey, so glad to be here.
And who are you?
It's awesome. I'm Brian Brushwood.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous of his physical, corporeal body here. I mean, look at him. He's all meat and flesh and physically there in Petaluma.
How do you do it, Scott?
How do I do it?
No, he was up for the Tech Guy, right?
That's right. I
And so
was
you
up
happened
here.
to be
I was
in-
up here filling in for Leo on the Tech Guy radio show, having a great time. Answered a bunch of questions, had a couple of interesting guests, and then I figured, you know what the heck? I'll stick around. I'll do Home Theater Geeks, which we just finished, and you said, hey, how about sticking around for Frame Rate? And I said, you bet.
Thank you for sticking around. We love having you. And we got a very special guest to join us to talk about his movie, It's the Big Story.
This just in, the big story.
We mentioned the Rootkit last week on the show, and Jonathan Schieffer, writer and director of the Rootkit, is very kind enough to Skype in and say hello and talk to us a little bit today. How's it going, Jonathan?
I'm doing well, yeah.
Hey,
good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. I saw your cameo in your trailer on Kickstarter, which was cleverly done. Tell people a little bit about what the Rootkit is and what the pitch is on Kickstarter.
The Rootkit's a story about computer hackers who discover a plot to monitor all internet activity. The pitch video I did on there, I actually had the idea of pitching a real studio, but since I don't want their interference in my plans and plots, I thought it would make a cool pitch video on Kickstarter. So I got my actors together and we did this.
And there's a clever reveal. You see a person playing, Jonathan, pitching to the studio execs, and then at a certain point, it's kind of a spoiler alert, I guess, but it
6
turns
minutes are gone.
Yeah. These guys are the actors that are going to be in the Rootkit if it gets funded. You are right now 8,000 of your $50,000 goal. You've got 18 days to go. So the idea is to make a hacker movie that's actually accurate, right?
Yeah, I mean that's really the goal, or at least on par with something like War Games or Sneakers.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good way to put it, is that having something accurate, I assume, doesn't mean that it needs to be tedious, because obviously hacking in real life does tend to be a very tedious affair. How do you plan to, or is this something you address in the video, how do you plan to keep it exciting for everyone at home who doesn't maybe understand the tech side of things?
Well, that's plot and acting. The dialogue is tech heavy, but hopefully what we're aiming at is it'll sound kind of like CSI, where they talk medical speak, and then people who understand it get it, and people who don't, you still get a great show.
That's the golden balance, right? Is to be able to actually have a story that is authentic. We're doing Dragnet on the Autopilot show, and one of the things that Jack Webb was committed to in that show from the very beginning, and with some resistance from NBC, was, I want this to be authentic. He would get cops to come to the shootings of the TV show with their badges, and they would borrow them for the period of the time that they shot. So they were actually using real cop badges. He wanted real stories. He wanted actual code names used. And it sounds like you're sort of in a long way in that tradition of saying, I want a good story, a compelling story, but I want it to be true.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely it. In fact, in order to pull this off, I'm not a hacker myself. I know enough about computers to make a compelling story, but I've recruited some of my computer science friends who are pretty intense hackers, a couple security experts, and just a freelance code guy, writes one of the versions of Firefox by himself, pretty much. They're my consultants, so we're going to be making the screens, so everything that we're talking about is going to be actually on the screen. It's going to be not fancy CGI stuff, but it'll be a command line. So my lawyer makes me say that we're not actually going to be hacking; that all hacks will be simulated. But
is that for reals? Like, your lawyer's that concerned about
yeah, she's freaked out. She's really scared about this because we're gonna basically be showing people how, summarizing, but how to break into home networks, how to run a DDoS attack, that kind of stuff. So it's gnarly.
But does she understand the culture and how, first of all, hacking isn't a bad thing in and of itself? It's what kind of hacking you're doing. But also the idea that a lot of these white hat hackers do this sort of thing and make it public so that you can defend against it.
Yeah, I've tried to explain the logistics of it to her, but she's, thankfully she's pretty paranoid about it, and so I'm covering all my bases. Mostly what we're concerned about is the devices that we'll be using. We've yet to get a lot of permission for them, and we're not sure that the companies are going to be super cool with it. So what to do with the logos to avoid lawsuits, that's one of her big concerns too. But like I said, go ahead. I was going to say, I would think any product placement would be good. They would like that. But I suppose being associated with hacking, maybe not. Well, it's kind of the argument that happened with Breaking Bad, is that the show is incredible and everybody who watches it loves it, but they had a really hard time finding advertisers because who wants to be associated with a show that promotes meth baking? Yeah.
Kentucky Fried Chicken wasn't beating down the door to be the place where Fring was the manager, right?
Right. Right, yeah. So...
well, just so folks get a little taste of what's going on, of course, they can go to your Kickstarter, and we'll have a link for that in the show notes. But kind of generally speaking, what's the rough outline of the plot?
I was hoping to get to this. I haven't said this publicly yet, but I want to tell you here. The idea starts out with one of the lead hacker is hired by a guy who believes his wife is cheating on him, and so he hires the hacker to break into his wife's computer to see if she has in fact done that. He breaks into it. It leads him to the guy with whom she's having the affair, and it turns out that guy works for a government contractor, and there the trouble ensues. So you start going down the rat hole, so to speak, and you find out a much bigger deal than what they were first looking for? Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, he slurps all their projects, goes through them one by one, and finds some pretty nasty stuff. I don't know, you guys, that sounds awesome. I'm already in. I'm there.
Yeah, dude, 100%. Are you kidding me? So where does this, is this the kind of project that you think could be a major motion picture release, or is it something that, where are you hoping that this ends up when people are able to see it, assuming that you hit your backing? My main goal is to get it to as many people as possible. Theater, if it can be profitable, yeah, I mean, that we'll do that. But I'd like to do a day and date release, which hasn't really been done very well yet. And for obvious reasons, because theaters want to have a monopoly on movies when they come out.
But the idea is that I'm making a show. Well, and it comes back to the underlying principle of what I'm getting at in the movie, which is that why I wrote it in the first place was I've heard a lot of interviews, and some friends of mine have told me that the tech sector is really looking for people to hire. They don't have enough qualified employees to go to. And so I want to give people the knowledge that if you apply yourself with technology today, with information that's currently available, there really isn't a limit. And so in pursuit of that goal, the more people I get to see it, the better it is. Although the likelihood of it screening in China is very low.
Well, an authorized screening anyway.
Yeah.
Only in the chat room wants to know where it's going to be shot. Is it be in the LA area?
Yeah. Well, because of the budget, we can't really afford to fly anyone anywhere. So most of it will be in LA.
Your budget
and
is
a little bit in Orange County, some of it in San Bernardino County.
Sure. Your budget is, for a movie, exceedingly low. I mean, your Kickstarter goal is $50,000, right?
Yeah.
That's like almost nothing compared to what it costs to shoot a movie these days. So I'm sure you're doing it with consumer cameras, which are now certainly plenty good enough to do professional quality stuff.
There was a movie, I think it was last year, called Tiny Furniture, and it did very well. It pretty much took the People's Award at South by Southwest, and then it got theater released. That movie was filmed on a camera called the Canon 7D, which I saw is now available at Costco.
Wow,
that's crazy.
So we're right now. My plan is to shoot on the 5D. And the T2i as a backup camera. If we completely overshoot the goal, Red did something amazing earlier this month where their Red 1 camera, with the MX, a really good camera, is now like $4,000. So,
yeah. Oh man, the Red camera is awesome.
Yeah, and it kind of gets back to what I was saying, is that the availability of technology and information today, there's really no walls to any of it anymore.
Good point. All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing the plot with us, for breaking the news. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Well, I dig your show, and I love the other stuff you guys do on Twit, man.
All right.
Like I said, in the tweet to the Security Now, Steve Gibson, that's the bulk of my research.
Is Security Now?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I learned.
For sure.
After listening to that podcast for 2 weeks, I learned 3 different easy ways to break into a home network.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it's for, is to let people know, like, this is how easy it is. This is why you need to be careful. These are the steps you need to take to protect yourself.
Yeah, so it's an honor to be on here, man. Thanks a lot for the invite.
I think I'm going to go home and change my password.
You might want to use haystacks.
Oh,
when you do that.
Okay.
Jonathan Schiefer, thank you so much. The Root Kit can be found at www.therootkit.com. Anything else to tell folks about the Kickstarter or information that they need to know?
If you like it, tell your friends. This is as legitimate a hacker movie as I can make.
All right. If you want a good hacker movie, I think this is the one to back. TheRootKit.com. Thanks again, Jonathan.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care. Let's move on to another big story.
Stop everything. It's another big story.
So Dyle TV, we've mentioned before, Brian, is launching finally. There's an Elgato attachment that you can get for your iPad and your iPhone, and it allows you to get TV from a handful of networks, mostly Fox and NBC, because they're the backers of Dyle, over the air. But it's not what you think, or at least it's not what I thought when I first saw it. You're not getting the broadcast over the air like you would get from an antenna plugged into your TV. It's a special broadcast that requires Dyle hardware.
Okay, now hold on. When you say special broadcast, this means, so the broadcast is going over the air, but not necessarily using the same HD spectrum that that your aerials would for your home theater setup?
I can't remember exactly what spectrum they're using, but yeah, that's essentially right. It's $100 for an adapter, which is a combination battery and antenna then that plugs in and receives the special broadcast of Dyle TV.
Now, there is a mobile HD TV broadcast standard, which is somewhat different than the one that you use with your antenna on your roof. Is this what that is?
If it's not what you're talking about, it's something like that, essentially. And we've seen this before, Mobi TV, for instance. What was the other one? There was was there an early Vcast that was actually not over the internet, or am I confusing?
I don't remember that.
But yeah, so you get no DVR functions. You get limited networks. You don't get all the major networks. They're not all on board yet. You get a handful of cities, 35 cities that it's operating in. But if you really like NBC and Fox shows, and you've got $100, and you live in one of these 35 cities, I guess this
now. Okay, but after the $100 adapter, is there anything else that you need? There's no subscription or anything because it's over the air?
Well, no, there's not yet. That's okay. They put a yet in most of these stories that I read about. So
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what this is great for. There's a very small market for whom this is an instant slam dunk, and that's going to be the psychotic sports fans. The people who currently bring those little Sony Trinitron, to get the air broadcast to watch stuff. Like this little gizmo, they attach it to their iPad. They're able to see the game that they're watching right in front of them live. Only get the broadcast. That's about the only slam dunk I could think for this. What about you?
You're not getting ESPN. You're not getting most of the sports. So
I mean, it could be good for carpoolers. Going on the commute every day, except for the guy driving.
But meanwhile, somebody else is like one person's watching whatever happens to be on in the morning. The other person's watching everything on Netflix or Hulu.
This is one of those things where it's like, I know it's not bad, but I also know that the reason they're doing this is not because they think this is a great service, that they think this is the best service consumers would want. They're doing it because they've got spectrum they don't want to lose, so they have to use it. They have to show that they're using it. And they want to protect their monopoly over broadcasting. So they're trying every single thing possible to say, well, this is the way we're providing you an opportunity that we control and can later charge and monetize. I don't understand. I wonder, could someone just make a free over-the-air tuner that is the same profile and with some hardware could run on an iPad with an app?
They should be able to do that with the mobile broadcast standard that already exists and has for years.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the problem is that your reception is wonky unless you're in like a very good area. Like if you're in an office building,
here's another problem. Maybe the problem is that nobody wants it. Maybe that's why we're not getting this so far.
Thank you for speaking truth to power, because I think that's probably what's going on.
Well, I know I don't want it. I don't care about watching TV, while I'm walking down the street.
Well, sorry, Dyle. I'm not glad I used Dyle. Let's move on to yet another big story.
Tuck in your bootstraps. It's yet another big story.
There's a couple of, we mentioned The Verge doing a series all last week about internet television, and they have, Inside the Fight for the Living Room is one of the articles that's up there that's worth taking a look at. There was also an interesting part of that series called Internet Television is Where Cable Was in Early Days. This is from Dawn Ostroff, Condé Nast Entertainment Chief. Now, the story's by Adrian Jeffries, but it quotes Dawn Ostroff. She won't talk about what Condé Nast is doing. She's in charge of their new entertainment group, which is going to make video. They're gonna try to create content based off the articles published by its magazines. Condé Nast owns Wired, they own The New Yorker, they own Ars Technica. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. But Ostroff would talk about the comparison of where digital entertainment is now, and she compared it to cable TV in the 1970s. A lot of people don't remember cable TV existed back then.
Oh, no. This is actually, I just gave a keynote at DevLearn a couple of weeks ago, and fully a third of the presentation was talking about branding and about how right now in new media we are seeing essentially, when broadcast television came out, the first movers had the advantage. They were early entrenched and established. That's why, NBC, CBS, and ABC dominated, and then eventually Fox and CW joined.
It was kind of an elegant transition from radio to TV, and in almost an unusual way, where the incumbents, NBC, ABC, CBS, with a few exceptions, just kind of moved into broadcast television.
Right. No, okay. Those power players did. However, the content, if you see early television, it's clear that they had no idea what to do with this new medium. They figured it's just radio with pictures. So they got their radio actors who had no on-screen presence. They ran stuff like essentially plays on stage, on screen, and eventually they figured out the voice of the new medium. Same thing happens again in the 1970s. If you look in the 1970s, when cable got deregulated, none of the big players, none of the broadcasters, ABC, CBS, NBC, they didn't invest at all because there was no audience. They're like, that's idiocy, which is why it's the Ted Turners, the TBSs, the CNNs, the HBOs. Those first movers were the ones who became established and entrenched. And in fact, NBC, by the time they wanted to get in on it, they originally created CNBC to just be cable NBC, and it floundered because that niche had already been filled. And it wasn't until they found an unfilled niche with business news programming that CNBC began to thrive. And likewise, I totally agree with this supposition, because here in new media, again, the initial audience was none, and that's why you didn't get a lot of old media investing in new media, entrepreneurial opportunities, because the audience wasn't there. And now that you're seeing old media coming in, meanwhile, it's the first movers, it's the Onion, it's your Revision 3s, it's your Twits, who are getting early market share and early dominant advantage by being first movers. And
there's also weird niches. One of the things that she points out in this article is that you had things like the babysitting channel, where they were like, we're going to target babysitters and give them stuff for the baby to watch that's interesting to them. Or there was the channel that just streamed traffic cameras 24 hours. There was the channel that took printed versions of Associated Press stories and just put them on screen with a musical background.
Oh, man.
The teleprompter corporation touted a technology that would allow advertisers to target doctors so that the program would only be sent to anyone who is registered in the service as a doctor, and everyone else would get different programming. This all sounds, in sort of a weird parallel way, familiar to what we have now, which
Absolutely.
is like, oh, well, we can target things, right?
Well,
do you remember cable in the 70s?
I do remember cable in the 70s, certainly. I mean, I was thinking what you were just talking about now. I mean, that's what TwitTV.tv is. It's, targeting the tech enthusiasts.
It's the babysitting channel.
No, it's not the babysitting channel. No, it's the geek channel.
Right, totally. The interesting thing about this, though, is there are examples of channels that have bridged the gap, right? The Learning Channel really started as a public service channel to provide learning at home. It was one of those early niche channels. We're going to do something that broadcast networks can't do,
right?
Because it doesn't scale to their level. The Learning Channel eventually was purchased by Discovery. It became a little broader. Now it's Honey Boo Boo, and it's made an entire transformation. Yeah. And you've seen that in smaller versions with music television becoming MTV and becoming a lifestyle program channel.
Right. The History Channel becoming the Pawn Channel.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, one of the aspects of the similarities between where we are in new media versus 1970s cable is that just as ridiculous as some of these ideas seem to us now from the 1970s, there's going to be a lot of people who look at the early days of YouTube programming and channels, and they're like, really? You thought this was going to be a good idea? But there's going to be other things that are counterintuitive that we never could have predicted. I mean, everyone thought Ted Turner was crazy when he launched CNN, a 24-hour cable news. Exactly. And, of course, by virtue of being first, they stayed dominant for 30 years.
That's a great point, because I think what's interesting to look at is what makes sense in the early days of a medium doesn't necessarily catch on and be successful. And it's almost like there's no way of knowing. If you sit down in the 1970s and say there's a babysitting channel and there's a 24-hour news channel, they both sound as weird and as logical. Like, okay, they're niche. They're for somebody who really wants news all the time. Most people just want it, when they come home from work like normal. But there may be some people who want it in the middle of the night. Not everybody's a babysitter, but there are babysitters, etc. One catches on, the other doesn't.
I mean, we're in a point of experimentation, I think, and it's like, throw as much stuff on the wall as you can, see what sticks, as they say. Something will, and you can't necessarily predict what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, and keep in mind also, we do have the advantage in new media of it being in many ways a bottom-up revolution, because you get this giant, massively parallel, marketplace of ideas where you can have surprising things. Like some of the most popular channels on YouTube are these makeup tutorials, or, of course, and there's this whole underground current of magic tutorial videos. That's, of course, what Scam School participates in. And all these things that you wouldn't think were possible. But again, some of them are going to look utterly ridiculous and silly a few years from now.
Well, and that's a really interesting parallel, because the thought is that the scale of the bottom-up revolution is such now that it won't turn out like the bottom-up revolution of cable. I mean, cable had cable access channels, and there was a lot of thinking in the early days that this would revolutionize television because it was open and anybody could make TV, and it didn't happen. When the internet came along, a lot of people said, well, it's different because the internet is much easier to access. You don't have to go take a class at Austin Community Cable. You don't have to rent really heavy equipment and lug it around. It's so much easier, and so many people have access to internet. And so it'll be different this time.
Plus the fact that the production equipment is much cheaper, much more available. You can do a much higher quality job than you could even with cable access. You still needed, a TV camera and, lots of lights and stuff. And now it's like with the music industry, the same thing. The big studios are going away as people make really high-quality albums in their bedrooms.
But the industry is going to go from $3 billion to $9 billion spending on online video advertising by 2017.
Wow.
And what happened to cable is when the money started coming in, the big guys started paying attention. They started buying up the TLCs. They started changing them. And they started going after these high-dollar audiences. Brian, do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know. I'm not in the business of predicting the future, except when I'm on stage and have sealed envelopes.
No,
then
Brian.
I'll predict the future, sir.
No, seriously, predict the future right now.
The answer is 12.
Yes. I knew it.
Nailed it.
All my money on 12. But in all seriousness, do you think the chances are greater or less of that sort of thing happening because the internet is so widespread?
Of what specifically?
On the one hand, you have the pattern of a new technology is available to a lot more people until it starts making money, and then the big guys come in and suck all the air out of the room and take it over, versus the internet routes around those things very elegantly and very effectively in a way that no other medium has.
I don't know. I mean, I guess what you're really asking is the question of media consolidation. Are we going to see moneyed interests come in and scoop up? I think you're going to see a lot of properties get scooped up. I think certainly that you've already seen that with Revision 3 getting bought by Discovery. But for every time you see that consolidation, it's going to be like a Hydra's head. There are, because of the internet, because of its inherently decentralized nature, there are these little pockets of micro networks and micro brands and micro programming where people will put hours and hours into broadcasts that'll be viewed by as few as 100 people. I mean, like last night, essentially, whenever I go live on Justin TV, I'm creating a miniature micro broadcasting network with very esoteric programming. And last night I got online and I played the Walking Dead video game, and we had a couple hundred people tune in live. These are numbers that just don't even register on the radar. And my motivation for doing it isn't anything outside of, brand management and doing fan service for these guys with connecting to them. And because you're able to play for different forms of currency on the internet, because there's a reason to do something like that. I didn't make any money, and it's I certainly that as a programming would be a very idiotic way for any kind of responsible business to build its brand. I don't know. I think that you will see some consolidation, but as much consolidation as you see, you will see even more splintering into very, very tiny pockets.
And that's going to really bring into question how are people going to make money, which is ultimately the goal here.
T-shirts.
Right?
Don't you know the whole internet runs on T-shirts?
Look, my Teespring T-shirt.
Merchandising.
Yeah, some way we got to make money. I mean, I've felt it in the publishing business. I've been an editor for 20 years. And, the advertising online is still very low compared to print, even though print is dying. We know that it is. But that's where most of the money still is. So the nut yet to crack is how are the big players or the little players, any players online, going to bring in the revenue that they want.
Yeah, I think the revenue's coming. It's just a long, arduous transition, and then who gets the cut of the pie?
Right.
But again, that's the way these games work. In the early days, there is no money, but there's positioning. You know, right now you're seeing we're entering the end of the first phase of early positioning, and now we're starting to see a little bit of money coming in, which we of course have talked about with the YouTube money that they paid for their independent channels, and things are going to get a little more cutthroat in the next 10 years.
It's like throwing up, you know, like a bunch of money in the middle of the street.
Right.
You know, suddenly everybody starts scrambling hungrily to gather it all up. All right, we got one more story that's actually a little bit related to it. It's our fourth big story, or not. At least it did. But it actually follows on from this. Frustrated video viewers don't come back. We're still in that part of online video where it's not easy. It's easy to turn on your cable television now and just start flipping through channels. It wasn't for a long time. It was actually, you know, kind of difficult to install. And I remember we had this brown box on top of the TV that you had to go over, and you had to press a depress switch to go to any of the channels above 12.
Right.
For like 13 to 24 or whatever. I can't remember where it ended, but.
Is that one of the ones with the slider boxes for the channels?
No, it didn't have a slider box. It was all like dip switches for all the channels, and then it had a tuning wheel on the side. Because when you'd press like 18, which I remember was MTV.
Then you'd have to center the frequency.
Exactly. Sometimes it would drift off, so you'd have to adjust it.
Right.
You know, those days are gone. But Brian, I think you found this story. This is basically saying people on the internet, if the video doesn't work right away, you've lost them.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. It was a study at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and I thought it was interesting because it put quantitative numbers to just how annoyed and how fast people get when they want to give up on stuff. Specifically, I loved this statistic. Viewers have little patience for videos that don't start immediately. After a 2-second wait, viewers already start turning away. For every additional 1 second, the abandonment rate goes up by nearly 6%. That rate's not consistent. Some viewers have more patience with higher value content like movies rather than brief clips. But eventually, and this is another great thing, thanks to the giant decentralized nature of the internet, we will get to essentially, just by studying the existing data, find out the precise amount of time that people will wait for a video to load before they get so annoyed. And hopefully, and this is going to be a weird conclusion to make, but I hope they isolate that number and figure out that that's the exact length of time that an advertisement should be.
Yes.
And then what they'll do is they'll reach the maximum number of people with the minimum amount of intrusiveness and get the maximum amount of ad dollars into new media content.
And that was one of the things at All Things D in that story, in that interview that we were talking about with the woman from Condé Nast, is that right now we're getting all these very short videos because people think, well, that's all people will have the patience for. But that's going to get longer and longer. And we already see, like, people will watch a high-quality ABC show on the internet if they believe that it's worth it. And one thing I've noticed is not 30-second pre-roll, not 60-second pre-roll. They're doing like 3-4 ads before these things. I was watching Arrow on the CW app on my iPad, AirPlayed to my Apple TV. So it was just like watching Arrow on TV. It looked great. But I would have 3 ads at the beginning. And here's the thing. Because I'm on my couch and I'm watching it on my television, it just didn't bother me. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's like, you know.
You're used to seeing ads in TV
It's like
shows.
watching live. Like, oh, I kind of wish this was on a DVR so I could fast forward. But fast forwarding is sometimes kind of clunky anyway. These are shorter ad breaks than they have on broadcasts. So,
and they're all at the beginning? They're all clustered? You don't have...
Well, they still have ad breaks in the middle of the show, too, yeah. Okay. But they start with ads. They don't start with the show, which is actually different than television.
Correct.
Where at the hour, they start with the show because they don't want to lose you.
Right.
I wonder if that will change. Yeah. All right. Shall we thank one of our sponsors, Brian?
Yes, if only we had a sponsor. Somebody who could provide valuable funds to keep frame rate alive. Unfortunately, nobody loves this show, Tom. I heard that on the internet somewhere.
Actually, that's not true, Brian. Pond 5 has been very good to us.
Wait, Pond 5?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the stock media marketplace that has all the videos and the sound effects and the clips and the 3D models that you're able to royalty-free put into any of your created content?
Yeah, that's exactly the one. I mean, they're pretty much a sponsor almost every week these days on Frame Rate.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. But that's amazing, though. That's these guys are fantastic. You know what I love about them is that it's a two-way street. Not only can you find just about here, Scott.
Yes.
Name anything in the world. Name it.
Star Trek.
Star Trek. There you go. We're going to search for Star Trek and see what they have here on Pond 5.
So obviously they're not going to have the Star Trek movies.
Yeah, but look at that.
Starship. You could start making your own. Look, that is a freaking Star Trek-like starship, too.
No kidding.
Look at that.
Now, suddenly, totally royalty-free. You can make it called Star Walk, your own rip-off movie. They got people here. Let me hear some sound effects here. What do we got?
Pond5.com.
Well, that's the watermark. But if you buy it, you don't hear that Pond5 part.
See,
so you
I'm
put a little
already
of that behind that Enterprise-looking thing. You've got a transporter sound effect right there. You've got now you're going on warp speed. They got this weird colors.
Oh, that
All
is so cool.
You're putting together a science fiction movie, and you haven't done anything except download from Pond5.
Yeah, and here's my favorite part is that it's a two-way street. If you're a media creator, if you're somebody who made that model of a copyright-free version of an Enterprise or something, you can take that 3D model, make it available on pond5.com. Other people pay you for work you've already done.
Yeah. So anyway, you're thinking like, oh, these are probably really expensive. No, they're not. But just to give you a sense of what they have there, you can get 50 free stock media downloads at pond5.com, pond5.com/framerate. That's pond5.com/framerate this month. We're a little over halfway through November, so you might. I'm checking my month watch, which doesn't exist on my wrist. Pond5.com/framerate. Go. We're still waiting on the Pond5 movie that we want people to put together.
That's right. Yeah, no, we kicked it out there, and now's the right time to do it because you could get, I believe, 50 free clips, right? If you go to pond5.com/.
We just gave you, just do that search for space, Star Trek, anything like that, and you get royalty-free downloads. You pay for them once, you get to use them. Pond5.com/framerate. We thank them for their support of Framerate. Let's slip into the slipstream. So I don't know about you, Brian, but I got all excited when I saw that Warner Brothers had released an app with television shows on it. Did you see this before it got corrected?
I missed it. It was apparently like a blip on the radar. It was there and then backseas.
So if you caught this and didn't hear the correction, Warner Brothers does have an app that allows you to get free versions of shows like Gossip Girl, Big Bang Theory, even some of the other, from various networks, right? Vampire Diaries. They're not all CW shows because Warner Brothers doesn't own CW, but they are a production house that makes television shows, many of which they sell to CW because they're a minority owner, but many, like The Big Bang Theory, they sell to other networks. And I thought, well, this is the signpost along the road. The producer has found a way to take the shows and sell them direct to us. And they were giving away some limited amount of free shows if you liked them on Facebook, etc. But basically it was just buy the shows at the day after they air, and you're on your way. Well, turns out it was accidentally published in the U.S. iTunes store. It was meant for Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. They get everything.
Oh, man.
I'll tell you what, man. We are getting more and more emails from people in little pockets all over the world who have awesome things that we don't get.
Did you notice that this week? All the HBO Goes, there's one in Romania now, and
really
Portugal or something, or no, it was in Brazil, or I forget where the email came from. But
I don't just mean HBO Go. I mean they now have an online service that you can pay for to get HBO without having a cable
subscription. Yeah.
I'll tell you, man, it's Spotify all over again. It's going to be we're going to get increasingly annoyed, and it's just going to come to the United States. I'm so excited to get rid of my full-on cable subscription for HBO Go.
Anyway, so if you are in the Benelux countries, the equivalent of $3 for HD or for standard def, $4 for HD versions, and then season passes. For instance, Big Bang Theory or Vampire Diaries, $38 in standard def, $44 in HD. I guess it's still a signpost on the road that it's happening at all anywhere, right?
Exactly.
But the reason they could do it in these countries is that the licensing agreements and distribution agreements are friendly enough to allow them to get away with it, is my guess there. Vudu is bringing their HDX streaming to PCs and downloadable movies.
Now, where was this? Was this available on some other entity before PCs before now?
You had to buy the Vudu box.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And it looked great. I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
That was the big advantage to the Voodoo boxes.
That's right.
Is that they had the best looking videos. So now HDX 1080p and 720p versions of the videos come into PCs, which makes that, I don't know, I think that puts the Voodoo service like back into main contention. I didn't think it was particularly out of contention, but it gives it a big advantage.
Yeah, because you now have a much wider set of platforms to view it on. You don't have to get the box. And a lot of people are using computers, as their primary source now. So I think that's great.
Although you still don't get the higher quality audio that you would get on the Voodoo box. That is limited to stereo for now.
That's too bad.
But maybe
HDX did have Dolby Digital 5.1, right?
It did. Well, it does. It does on the box.
On the Voodoo box, right? Okay.
Right. Also, we got a lot of home theater geekish stories in the lineup today. Initial projects from 3Net Studios. For 3D and Ultra HD shows are shooting the first native 4K project.
Ooh.
No one will be able to watch it in 4K
Well, nobody except somebody who buys one of these $20,000 4K TVs.
Well, and there's not any channels to distribute that actually broadcast in 4K yet either. So you'd have to buy a disc of it.
Or have it stream.
Yeah, you could have it stream. That's true.
Or download.
But 3Net is a joint venture from Sony, Discovery, and IMAX that is a 3D channel.
Correct.
That you can get. Now, they do not broadcast in 4K, but maybe someday they will, and now they're getting set up. This is sort of like back in the 90s when we heard the first high-def shows were being shot, right?
Right, exactly. Same sort of deal we're seeing now. And 3Net, 3D broadcasting in general is not really doing very well. I got DirecTV specifically for 3D. Because I wanted to watch the Olympics in 3D, but then I wanted to, sort of experience 3D broadcasting. And for the most part, 3Net, I think, has got stuff on all the time. But another, N3D is the other one that was the Olympics were on. And it continually just says, stay tuned for upcoming content. I'm just going, come on, what's going on here? But, obviously 4K is the next 3D, in a sense. It's the next technological advance. And I've always been concerned that we're going to have these 4K TVs and no content. But again, as you say, that's exactly what happened with HD.
Right.
And it's going to catch up.
I'm going into broken record mode here. It's like, I think it's great that they're making the content. I think it's a chicken and egg type thing that you got to have content to get people excited. However, I think telling people that they want 4K displays so that they can watch really pretty movies is a terrible idea. We don't even see 4K displays truly being used when we go to the movie theater.
That's
correct.
To
the movie theater, you're watching half of 4K. The 4K will work and it will do well, but it's going to be as some other application. It's going to be as computer monitors. It's going to be as video walls and the ambient backgrounds or something. But this idea that even crisper movies is the purpose for 4K, I fundamentally don't believe will happen.
I tend to agree, especially since the standards that are being talked about now still have 8-bit color, which is a technical term to mean that the range of colors is going to be the same as it is now. And it's like, well, why? You can obviously bump that up. Why don't you? Why don't you make other aspects of it better? And they're just not. So
we're just going to skip over to 8K?
Maybe they are.
The people who saw those demos, they had some at the Olympics in London.
Yep.
Where, Sharif Sark from Engadget was like, forget 4K. It's just not going to happen. It's not worth it. Go straight to 8K. There are no more pixels. The pixel is dead. do you think that he's like overdoing it?
I do think he's overdoing it. I mean, I think 4K, you can't see the pixels in 4K unless you have your nose up against the screen.
He had his nose against. I think he actually did have his nose against the screen. All right. Warner's Archive on Demand disc service is kicking off Blu-ray availability. They've had this for regular DVD for a while, where rare movies in their catalog, you can have them manufacture on demand. Now, it's a limited amount of titles. It's not like you can pick anything that's ever been, recorded by Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
But they're starting with Gypsy and Death Trap. That you essentially order, and they burn the disc as you order them.
Yeah, it's like publish on demand.
Exactly.
Book publishing on demand. I'm kind of surprised it took this long to get to that point.
Yeah, it was. Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, like, the curious thing to me is the entire value of having a one-off print-on-demand for video discs is to have a massively large library, something that it would be ineffective or a stupid thing to keep inventory on, to have offset printing for everything, and then just out of this giant mile-wide ocean that's only an inch deep, have people grab here and there. But if you're going to launch it by only having two, I mean, I suppose I don't understand the thinking, because if you're only going to launch it with 2 titles to begin with, then you negate the one benefit to having this kind of print-on-demand service.
Well, is that it? Is it? They're
launching with 2 titles, and then they'll add titles as time goes on.
Oh, okay. Well, you got to start somewhere, I guess.
Well, yeah, but why not start with 1,000 titles? I mean, they've got the
Are
titles.
they properly digitized to look good on Blu-ray?
That's the question.
That's a good point.
So the question is, should they have waited longer while they digitize more movies so they can come out with a big spread? Or should they do this and say, all right, we did 2 really well. Here they are. We're going to go back and do more and come out with those as we do them and do them right.
I'm with Brian on this. I would have waited till they had a bunch more titles.
You know what they may be worried about? They may be worried if they waited until they had a bunch more titles that people wouldn't be using Blu-ray anymore.
Blu-ray's going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
It's not going to disappear anytime real soon.
All right. I'm talking about the next Xbox having Blu-ray built in. I feel like, really? That seems like going backwards.
Oh, no, it has to. It needs to, just because I'm not going to buy a Blu-ray player. The only way a Blu-ray player is going to enter my house is built into a game console.
Why does Microsoft care, though? They just sell you the movie as a download, and you get access to it in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about storage.
Well, that was the rumor. You remember back in the days of HD DVD versus Blu-ray, you had, of course, Sony had the Blu-ray player built in, and Microsoft Xbox had the regular DVD, and they had the HD DVD attachment on there.
Right.
Like they were kind of obstinate, refusing to kind of really pick a side in that battle, because the rumor was that Microsoft wanted them to continue to fight, and in that time have direct downloads come in and steal their lunch, which kind of happened, not quite as cut and dried as I'm sure they were hoping, but I could totally believe that given their strategy since then.
And yet, as you say, that it didn't quite happen that way. Unlike music downloads, MP3s came in and ate the lunch of DVD audio and SACD. Mm-hmm. Those are both superior formats, and what ate their lunch was an inferior format because consumers preferred convenience over quality. Now, in the case of video, that wasn't as clear-cut, as you say. And Blu-ray is still around and being released. A lot of things are still being released on it, and I think it's Xbox coming out with a Blu-ray player? Is that what you said?
Well, the rumor is that the next version of the Xbox would have Blu-ray capability. And you know what? It may be as simple as they're going to use Blu-ray as the format for the games in the next console.
Exactly.
And so why not let it play movies at the same time?
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Not so much an intentional thing as like, it would be stupid not to enable that.
Think about how many video games that, now when you download off of Steam, it's very common to have, 10 gigabyte games downloaded. Obviously, if you were able to put that in a dense format like Blu-ray, it would make things a lot easier on a next generation console.
And I'm sure the Blu-ray Association is like, hey, Microsoft, we'll give you some really favorable terms to use Blu-ray as your game format for the optical disc, even though that you didn't have to.
Right.
That may help out too.
Right.
Let's take a look at tube tops. I meant actually loading.
I see what you did there.
No, we can do this segment. Sure, why not? The Nintendo Wii U came out in North America on Sunday. Mine is in the mail right now. I was an idiot and I didn't pre-order it fast enough, so I haven't gotten mine yet. And one of the big disappointments is that the TV service that Brian and I have been excited about isn't available out of the gate. However, Netflix said, hey, guess what? We will be available out of the gate. When you download your 5 gigabyte update for the Nintendo Wii U and you plug it in, A, don't unplug it and don't lose your internet connection because you might brick it. But B, you'll get Netflix.
Yeah, and I guess that certainly makes sense because Netflix already had their app available on the Nintendo Wii service as it already stood, right?
Yes, it was on Wii, but it wasn't on the Wii U up until this point. So even the reviewers had it. We're like, we don't see Netflix on the Wii U. We don't know how, I guess it's not coming.
Were those pre-production units that they were reviewing?
Exactly. Yeah. And Netflix said, oh, we figure we got ourselves in the first update somehow, even though Hulu, Amazon, and Nintendo's own TV service isn't in there.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this on Tech News Today, and boy, for somebody who traditionally handles, as I put it earlier, like second only to Apple in the clarity and precision of the way they roll out their projects, this definitely seemed like a botch release because making big promises with the TV service and then not being able to deliver until it's pushed back for another month, having the giant fat update, having the bricking, the fact that the Wii the Wii U can't upscale existing Wii games. In fact, Wired made an article called 10 Things I Hate About Wii U, and they list real fast the giant update. They say a brutally slow OS, the Netflix not working out of the box.
They say it basically sucks. It's there, but it sucks.
Right. The small battery in the gamepad, the social media, the Miiverse. Apparently, you immediately get your account banned or set up for review if you put anything in your Me account that makes it possible to figure out who you are in real life. So it's a social network where you are not allowed to find any of your friends, which is a curious way to go about it.
That's really odd. Yeah, playing old Wii games, the backwards compatibility is apparently not very good. There's some non-functional buttons on the home screen. And it's not getting rave reviews out of the box. And it does. I'm sorry, Brian. I think, I hate to call anything a botched release, especially when I haven't got my hands on the actual unit yet. I played with pre-production units that were fine, but I was just playing a game. I wasn't doing any of this other stuff.
Right.
And it sounds like it's not ready.
Yeah,
Sounds like it to me.
And I'm not going to say I'm not going to say it's a botched release, but certainly this is well below our expectations from what Nintendo's given us in the past. They have played much better ball than they are this game. Their head's not in the game right now. That's all I'm saying.
And this is good hardware. I'll swear to that because I've used the hardware and it can perform when it's running the right software. It's all software that seems to be the issue here, which on the one hand is horrible because really you released your product without having the software ready. On the other hand, it does mean they have a chance to fix it with more huge, ungainly, large updates.
Right.
Another thing that got updates was Google TV. If you have an LG Smart TV, you're ahead of the pack. They're getting all these Google TV updates first, but they will be rolling out most of them to the second generation boxes. Even the first generation boxes are getting a couple of these things. One is On Live, added to the LG Smart TV. Another is Google TV Voice Search. This is the one that you won't get on the first gen boxes, but you will be able to just speak. Some contextual things too, like show me movies with Christian Bale, and it'll be able to find all the movies with Christian Bale and tell you whether they're available either on any live TV that you've got hooked up or any of the services like Netflix or Hulu or any of the things that you're using. I take that back. I don't think Hulu has an app for Google TV yet, but Netflix does, and Google Play Store it would look at. There's also a new primetime guide in the update that tries to tie in and improve the ability to show you all of the things that you have available to watch at the time. It's just called primetime. It's kind of confusing because it doesn't necessarily bear specifically on what's broadcasting in primetime.
Yeah.
It's just, again, another way to look at all the things available to watch.
I wonder if this will be available also on the Vizio CoStar.
That's one of the second-gen devices, so it will get it eventually. The LG is the one that's getting everything first.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, I'm inordinately excited about the voice search stuff, and especially as contextualization gets better. Because essentially what we're doing is we're all zeroing in on having our own Jarvis, right? Because it's like we're becoming accustomed to the idea.
Your own Jeff Jarvis?
Yes, Jeff Jarvis there. No, Jarvis from the Iron Man franchise.
Oh, yes, that Jarvis.
Yeah,
that
where
makes
you
more
just walk
sense.
into a room and you say, I want something like this, and then it pops it up there. It's like, I love it, man. And it's like, I'm excited because I believe now that this is going to happen in my lifetime in the next 10 years. You'll be able to have casual conversations with your consoles and get stuff done effectively just by using natural voice language. Like I've already learned the knack of talking to Siri almost casually, but in another 5 years, it's going to be exceptional.
And you know what? The guide isn't getting as much play as the voice search because the voice search is flashy. But what it does is it learns your preferences and tries to find things that you might want to watch that are available to watch. If you're constantly watching Archer, it's going to say, oh, well, here's some other great animated stuff.
Yeah, that's been going on for a while, though. DirecTV does it. Dish may. I've switched from Dish to DirecTV, but I know that DirecTV, as I start watching TV content, when I go into the menu, it'll say, oh, you might like this and this and this. This is what's on right now.
Imagine, though, and this is what Google's trying to do here, is if instead of seeing the grid every time and having to scroll through, it was like, oh, well, you seem to watch these channels the most, so we'll put these up at the top. Oh, you seem to like these kinds of shows, so we'll make those easier to find at the top of the grid. It's that kind of thing that makes it, that separates it. We'll see how well it works, but pretty cool. Dish Network has got something out called the well, they have something called the Hopper. We talked about that last week, and the fact that it, at least for now, is going to be allowed to be continued to sell. They're still in court over it.
Over the commercial skipping.
Yeah, the commercial skipping part of the Hopper box. They're getting an off-air digital TV tuner, and don't be put off by that. It basically means an over-the-air tuner that you can plug in by USB and get all of your available digital channels.
The Hopper couldn't do that to begin with?
No, because the Hopper was only getting the Dish channels. And so here's the thing, right? Because you might think, well, Dish has local channels. What's the big deal? If your local CBS station broadcasts 5 digital channels, Dish doesn't provide all 5. They, you know, but this will. And so suddenly, now your Hopper is not recording just the main broadcast from all of these channels.
And all those things get recorded onto the Hopper.
They're getting all your sub-channels as well. So, you know, there's antenna TV, and there's sometimes there's cable networks that broadcast on these off channels on digital. I know Fox a lot of times in the summer they'll have 2 baseball games that they'll show regionally, and then the second Fox digital channel will show the other baseball game. Stuff like that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and $30 from the Dish Online store.
I'm there.
Right on.
Update also allows you to pair Bluetooth audio devices with the DVR, see album art on SiriusXM. There's a few other things coming in a software update that goes along with this as well. Let's take a break and thank our sponsor, Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. I use it for my books. I was like, you know what? I just want an easy place to tell people all the books that I've self-published. And if they ask, like, where can I get your books, where can I go? But I want it to look good, and I suck at design. So I went to Squarespace. I started meritbooks.squarespace.com. I didn't spend any time, and I was able to get a decent-looking website.
I actually use Squarespace myself to create a website for a concert that I'm producing in December called Tuba Christmas.
Oh, really?
Yep. Hundreds of tubas playing Christmas carols. You haven't lived till you've heard 200 tubas play Jingle Bells.
That sounds pretty amazing.
So go. It's at tubachristmasla.com.
Tuba Christmas LA. And now
made by Squarespace.
I made with the default Squarespace ID, but you've got a domain name, which they could do that as well.
I spend a little money. It takes a little money to do that, but you know, I wanted to have an easy domain for people to get to, and it's got all the information if anybody's in LA and wants some holiday cheer.
It's so easy to use now. You actually see the site the way the viewer is going to see it when they download it, and then you see some little controls that you can click in and say, I want to edit that, or I want to move this picture around. They also resize your images for different platforms, so 7 different images. The templates customized so that they look correct if somebody's on a phone or a tablet or a big screen. It's faster and easier than ever, but you don't even have to take our word for it. Go to squarespace.com right now, and you don't need anything. It's not anything special. You don't need to ask permission. You don't put in a code. Just go to Squarespace and start making a website. It's that easy. You don't need to give them any information. You've got a trial where you can import your current blog if you have one, or just mess around with the templates. Now, if you do like the service and you want to pay for it, you should remember this code, FrameRate11, because if you do use that code, that offer code gets you 10% off first purchase on new Squarespace accounts, including monthly and annual plans. And don't forget, if you want a domain name, be fancy like Scott Wilkinson, you can get a free domain name when you sign up for an annual plan, and you get 10% off when you use the code FrameRate. Squarespace.com, we thank them for their support of FrameRate. Brian, should we do film foul?
No. Yes.
Oh, wait.
No, yes, no, yes, no, yes.
No, we're doing film foul.
I think Jason decided. Wow, are there some awesome film film stories? Film film, of course, our section of our show where we talk about the things you can watch that you might want to watch. And we've been going on for a long time about House of Cards, the Kevin Spacey vehicle coming to Netflix.
Can we take a look at the trailer, actually? Because what I love about it are the tones that remind me just a little bit of Fight Club. The middle of being in the middle of a scene and turning to the camera and talking to us directly.
Yeah, forget Lillingham.
Execute the office of the President of the United States. That I will faithfully execute the office of
Power is a lot like real estate. It's all about location, location, location. The closer you are to the source, the higher your property value. Centuries from now, when people watch this footage, who will they see smiling just at the edge of the frame?
So help me God. Congratulations.
This is going to be a big year for us.
This is the memo I've drafted on our Middle East policy we've been developing. I'd like to coin the phrase trickle-down diplomacy. That
Frank,
way...
we are not nominating you for Secretary of State. I know he made you a promise, but circumstances have changed.
The nature of promises, Linda, is that they remain immune to changing circumstances.
I know you shouldn't trust that woman.
I didn't, I don't. I don't trust anyone.
Then how could you not see this coming?
Walker just nominated Carl.
It's a long road to confirmation.
I protect your identity. I print whatever you tell me, and I'll never ask any questions.
So we're talking about trust. What is it you want? Your absolute, unquestioning loyalty. Anything.
We're in a very gray area, ethically, legally, which I'm okay with.
Shelley Barnes of the Washington Herald, quoting a source close to the president.
Not exactly sure how that got CNN.
I want it over. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but I will not do that. Get ready, Kathy. Things are about to move very quickly.
Okay. I'm ready.
Do you understand how you're to behave?
And if I don't play along, we'll cleave you from the herd and watch you die in the wilderness.
You promised me it wouldn't be like this.
We'll have a lot of nights like this. Making plans. Very little sleep.
I expected that.
Take a step back. Look at the bigger picture. That's how you devour a whale. One bite at a time. Give and take. Welcome to Washington.
Dude, here's what's remarkable. There are two things that are remarkable. First of all, I don't think any of us planned to show that entire trailer here on Frame Rate, but instead we got sucked in and it plays just as well audio as it does video. And second of all, how quickly did you forget that this is a Netflix story?
Oh,
this is just an awesome looking movie or series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, obviously, it is a redo of the House of Cards that was done by the BBC. I think it was by the BBC. It was done in the UK. But it has turned into a series, which is a little bit of a different take. And it's obviously the U.S. government, not the UK government. But it's got big names. It's got big producers behind it. And Netflix certainly not the first to do original series as an internet entity. YouTube obviously funding all of their channels. Hulu's got a ton of original series on there that are very good. But this, to my mind, is the best looking one. This obviously, and apparently HBO was bidding on this. And Netflix came in and just swept the rug out from under them.
Yeah, we covered it back in the day. I want to say that there was like $100 million Netflix paid for this. It was unreal, the commitment they made.
So I definitely look at this and say, yes, if you said coming to HBO, coming to Showtime at the end of this thing, I wouldn't have blinked an eye. This is
perfectly reasonable. Yeah,
high quality program.
You bet.
Aaron Sorkin is writing the Steve Jobs film that is based on the Walter Isaacson authorized autobiography. There's another film being made that stars Ashton Kutcher as Steve Jobs. That is a different movie, and it's not based on the Isaacson book. Sorkin has revealed, what do you guys think of this? There's only going to be 3 scenes in the book, or in the movie. One scene is backstage before the announcement of the original Mac. One scene before the announcement of Next, when Steve Jobs was no longer at Apple, and one scene backstage before the announcement of the iPod.
That's the entire movie?
Each scene is 30 minutes long.
Oh, my God.
And
I love it.
And written by Aaron Sorkin, so snappy Dyle.
Well, super snappy, yeah. 30 minutes of Aaron Sorkin.
I think it's going to feel almost like a play, I would imagine, and that because everything's real time. You're just in this location. You got 3 acts. I think it sounds like a really good way to differentiate itself from, whatever that other project's going to be, the Ashton Kutcher one.
Yeah, it sounds like it could go horribly wrong, and it could if you didn't have the right person directing it, if you didn't have the right actor. So a lot hinges on the execution of it. But I certainly think that Aaron Sorkin's the right guy to write this sort of thing.
I would agree.
He's doing a lot of research on his own, too. I mean, he's going and talking with the folks who worked on the original Mac, who worked at Next, who worked on the iPod. I'll be very curious to see how it plays out. Disney, according to the Register, doesn't plan to just do episodes 7, 8, and 9. They're talking about doing 3 Lucasfilm movies every year. Now, not 3 Star Wars movies, but they want to crank up the volume at Lucasfilm.
Now, what other these have to be new properties that they're going to get them to work on, right?
Well, yeah,
Because it's like,
I would think so. There might be some spin-offs or side projects, et cetera, but some of them are going to have to be fully original to keep that pace up.
yeah, sure. I mean, Lucasfilm certainly doesn't put out 3 movies a year the way it is right now. So I don't know if they're going to get an infusion of cash, if they're going to build up the division and get a lot more people working on it. That seems awfully ambitious for that entity the way it is now. And I never had the impression that Lucasfilm was sitting on a lot of movie-making potential that they failed to exercise. So
well, what this sounds like is this Kathleen Kennedy, who now runs Lucasfilm under Disney, says to Entertainment Weekly that the company aims to make 2 or 3 films a year. So it sounds like Lucasfilm is going from being a vehicle for making Star Wars films to being a movie studio. Saying, you know what, we want to make a couple of 3 movies a year. Let's use what we've got. Let's use this talent.
Yeah,
seems right
good
to me.
Yeah. The first 9 minutes of Star Trek Into Darkness, remember there's no colon, it's just Star Trek Into Darkness, the next Star Trek J.J. Abrams movie, will premiere in IMAX theaters next month. So if you go to see The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, you're going to have to choose, do you want HFR or do you want to see the Star Trek trailer?
Now, I will say you don't necessarily have to make that choice.
Is that right?
Because
Is there a
some
way to...
IMAX theaters are going to have HFR.
But not all of them.
Not all of them.
So you have to choose carefully.
Right. And what you have to do is you have to go to a website called 48fpsmovies.com. And when you go to 48fpsmovies.com, you'll be able to find a link to a list of all the theaters that are showing The Hobbit in HFR. And some of them are IMAX theaters.
All right, so if I find that 48 frames per second theater list, then I just have to look down the list until I find.
You have to find where the link is.
Well, you have to find your state. But for instance, Alhambra, Renaissance Stadium 14, and IMAX is an HFR theater. Now, they have an IMAX theater, and they are HFR. Does that necessarily mean that the IMAX is HFR? What if they have an HFR theater, you know, there's 14 screens?
Well, they're not going to call, I don't think, anyway.
Okay.
My assumption is they're not going to say specifically that the Alhambra IMAX theater in the whatever the complex is gonna be the HFR. They would say it would be in the complex, in the Alhambra 14 or whatever it's called. They wouldn't identify IMAX if it wasn't going to be an HFR.
Gateway Stadium 16 and IMAX, Brian. That's yours.
Yes. No. I believe. Oh no! Wait. No. IMAX.
If you want to get HFR and IMAX, that's the
you're
only
not getting me out of the Alamo Draft House, buddy. It's not going to happen. Nice try, sir.
Well, then you're not going to see the Star Trek trailer. 9 minutes too. That's a lot of them. That's a lot of a piece of movie.
And again, I guess this is good for building hype, but it's like, is this really going to be something that will convince people to go see the Star Trek movie that weren't otherwise going to see it? It just, like, I always associate giving away this much of a movie for free with properties that need the exposure, and I wouldn't think that Star Trek needs the exposure.
No, The Dark Knight was the last one I remember. To me, it's not they need the exposure. It's they want to boost people going to this particular kind of theater.
Yes, exactly right. They're trying to build buzz for the movie, which is already going to be plenty buzzworthy enough. But yes, also going to the high-end theater to experience it in this, in IMAX or whatever.
Because the Dark Knight Rises in 3D, or no, wait, not the. I can't remember what the movie was. There was a movie that if you saw it in IMAX, you got a few minutes of The Dark Knight Rises long before it came out. And actually before they redid the vocal track.
Oh, really?
Because I remember when I saw The Dark Knight Rises, I was like, oh, the evil guy sounds different that he did in the...
Bane.
In the lead. Yeah, Bane. The voice...
You called the lead guy?
Yeah, the fun, I get
Mr. Bad Stuff. He was up there with the face mask, and he sounded like a grandpa all of a sudden.
Yeah. I don't know. He was the bad guy.
By the way, regarding The Hobbit, I also want to mention that it's also going to be in some theaters, not in IMAX theaters. The sound format is Dolby Atmos.
Oh, right, because there's another vector.
There's another vector. Not only is it going to be in 3D at high frame rate, it's going to have Dolby Atmos, which is many channels of audio around you and above you.
Scott, I respect you. You know that you're the man, and I trust you on just about everything. However, you're pitching me this Venn diagram where you got your Atmos, you got your HFR, you got your IMAX, and in the middle, maybe there is that one perfect movie theater. But guess what? Movie theater I'm going to serves beer.
That's another vector.
Well, that's another vector
in the diagram. Are you going to be able to get a beer delivered to your seat?
I do know that The Hobbit is going to be available in at least 7 different formats.
And the beer is served in 7 different
I mean, you got your 2D, you got your 3D, you got your HFR, you got your
IPA.
Yeah.
All right, let's check in on the winter movie draft. Who will lose? Who will win? Well, it was the big weekend for Sarah Lane, getting $141 million out of the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2. How's it looking, Brian?
I don't know. It's the question is, will they have week over week momentum? Obviously, that's a huge opening. But I'm gonna if I'm just making up numbers, I'm gonna say this thing's gonna top out around 300 million. So she's certainly into very respectable territory. But I'm a little more optimistic now than I was. I mean, first of all, I'm still convinced you're gonna win. But I think that I've got a chance with Lincoln to drift up to maybe 350. I think Sarah will beat me, though.
I was talking to Sarah earlier, and she's like, her worry is that the other movies she has will not be enough to float her above the competition. For instance, Red Dawn, Thanksgiving
20 million.
Thanksgiving movie. Thanksgiving movie is going to get a little more than another movie would normally get. But
Sure.
How many people are going to say, "Ooh, I'm full of pumpkin pie and turkey. Let's go see Red Dawn"? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a patriotic time, and especially if you got people who, my demographic that remembers the movie from when they were kids, going and checking it out. But
my saving grace here is not The Hobbit. I have The Hobbit, and that's going to put me in contention. But I think the thing that it makes or breaks me is Rise of the Guardians, which also
have you seen the trailers for Rise of the Guardians?
I saw the entire movie.
What?
Yep.
All right, spill it.
I got to go to a preview. It is gorgeous.
Yeah,
the
is it good?
Visuals are beautiful. The 3D is very effective. I happen to be a fan of 3D. I know not everybody is.
I am.
I thought the 3D was extremely effective. In fact, I had the director, Peter Ramsey, on as a guest on The Tech Guy this weekend. And very interesting guy. His first feature film, the first black director to get a feature animation from DreamWorks. And I thought he did just an incredible job. Guillermo del Toro was also involved as executive director.
Oh, wow.
And what a great premise. The premise is, what if Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, and Jack Frost, and the Sandman were all buddies? In fact, superheroes. Protecting the innocence of children.
The Avengers of Innocence.
The Avengers of Innocence. And the bad guy is Pitch Black, voiced by Jude Law. Really, really good. Really
Awesome.
good. I thought that was a fabulous movie. I highly recommend it. Comes out November 21st, I think, next week.
All right, let's do it.
That's when you'll know. Basically, and by the way, on the memes on the other side, Justin Robert Young has made a stake bet against my assistant, John Tilton, that he does not believe that the movie will even make $150 million. John Tilton says it definitely will because it's, an animated feature that has freaking Santa Claus right before the holidays.
Right.
You're gonna
Although it's
know,
not a Christmas movie. In fact, the time frame is Easter.
That's weird.
Oh, interesting.
Which is a little weird. But I will also say Santa Claus voiced by Alec Baldwin doing a Russian accent. Very good.
Awesome.
I don't know if it'll break 150 million. Justin may still win his stake bet, but it doesn't have to help me out.
Here's my point, Tom, is you're going to know opening weekend. If this thing has a huge opening weekend, we could pretty much declare you the winner at that point.
All right, well, we're running really long today because we're just having too much fun. Let's do a real quick version of what we're watching.
What we're watching.
I watched Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. Great battle scene.
Was there really?
Yeah. No, there's an excellent battle scene. No other reason for people who aren't already into Twilight to see it. So maybe wait till it comes to, HBO or DVD or something like that, and then watch, skip to the end and watch the battle scene. Absolutely incredible.
Right on. And so you saw Blood and Chrome, though. Believe the hype?
I started watching Blood and Chrome. I can't believe this thing is not on television. It's amazing. It's so good.
God.
Yeah.
It's like I get mad. It's like that's the one, you see, from everything you see, you're like, okay, that's the one excuse where it makes sense, where sci-fi would drop the stupid ball on this and ruin everything, is if it turned out to be bad and it just didn't make the cut. But then knowing it's good, that it got fireflied before it even got released.
Yeah.
It's me off.
And then I caught up all 7 episodes of Arrow, which is a CW take on the Green Arrow. And it's a superhero series. It's watchable. It's great. I enjoyed it. Loved it. I ate them all up like candy this weekend. So, Scott, what have you been watching?
Well, I saw Rise of the Guardians, of course, which I thought was great. I went and saw Lincoln, fabulous movie, really good. On TV, I got to tell you, I didn't get into The Big Bang Theory when it started, but I've recently started catching up with it, and it's fabulous. I just love it. Of course, I'm a geek, and they're all geeks, and it's very geeky. So, you know, but I don't know why I didn't start with it, but a couple of my friends said, you really got to start watching this, and so I did, and it's really, really good.
That's one I should get back into that. I bailed out like a few episodes into the first season. Brian, what have you been watching?
Of course, Always Sunny in Philadelphia continues to be freaking hilarious this season. Walking Dead, which I'm sure we'll talk about, still live streaming the Walking Dead video game, which you got to tell you, man. These days, I'm more interested and excited about the next episode of the Walking Dead video game than I am for the television show, which is not necessarily a testament to how the show's going, although we'll talk about that, but so much as a testament of how good the video game story is. And somebody tipped me off to a movie called The Man from Earth, which I just started and then got pulled away from, but I love the setup for it. It looks like, talking about that Steve Jobs movie where it's 3 vignettes, just all real time in this one place. This is a story of a guy who basically confesses to his intellectual professor friends that he never ages and, in fact, has been alive since, for 14,000 years and has watched all of humanity come and go during that time. And I'm really interested with the premise, so I'll tell you how I liked it once I finish the thing.
Let's do a quick couple of feedbacks.
Now it's time for feedback with Brian and Tom on Frame Rate. Oh, yeah.
Sean would like to pose a question. It's the future, 10 years from now, and A Song of Ice and Fire has completed its run on HBO. George R.R. Martin has completed his epic tale, and the masses need something to fill the void. What is the next fantasy novel series that should be transformed into the visual medium of television? Go, Brian.
Dude, that's a no-brainer. If it's ever going to happen, it'll happen in 10 years, and it's got to be Stephen King's The Dark Tower series. Because right now, obviously, HBO is super invested in this fantasy franchise, and they got a long time until they start something else. But my hope is 7 years from now, after seeing the success of Game of Thrones, 7 years from now, they'll take on as big an epic journey with The Dark Tower.
I would love to see Dune, not a miniseries that's doing a little better than a movie, but an actual long series that commits to doing all 6 episodes of Dune the way they've committed to doing Game of Thrones and doing it right. That's what I would absolutely love to see. Scott, do you have a thought on this?
I do. I just finished rereading the 3 original Foundation books by Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the whole time through, man, I would love to see that produced in a video movie, some sort of format. And then aside from those last 3, those original 3, there are a bunch more now,
Yeah.
So that could be fodder for a long time.
Some network could play that out forever.
Exactly.
All right. Next email, and then we're out.
Yes, sir. Josh writes us, hey, guys, one thing that was not brought off by the blogs and podcasts, including Frame Rate in regards to Disney purchase of Lucasfilm, was the distribution rights to the original 6 films. According to Hollywood Reporter, episodes 5, 4... Yeah, 20th Century Fox owns the distribution rights to episodes 5, 4, 6, and the prequel
Everything
trilogy
but A New Hope.
Until 20... Right, exactly. But the episode 4, A New Hope, is forever owned by Fox to do with whatever they want. In other words, for Disney to release it in a mega box set, which I personally don't care about, in 2020 with the new sequels, they would have to make a deal with Fox. Do you think Disney would try to buy the rights to episode 4 from Fox, or would be forced to cut a licensing fee? I mean, the answer is obvious. They'll have some lawyers hash out a bunch of crap in the back room, and you'll get your box set. I mean, to be honest, I really don't care who gets money for what.
Well, and I'm not sure that's absolutely correct. We did talk about it. I can't remember if it was on Tech News Today or Frame Rate or just off air, but they can get the rights back after a long period of time Or wait a minute, no, it's the other 5 movies that they can get the rights back to. He's right about Fox having right of first refusal, but they can buy it. They can buy those. I mean, Disney can buy them from Fox. Fox might not be willing to sell them. That's one of the reasons you don't have Firefly right now, is that Fox is making too much money selling merchandise and DVDs, and it's too expensive to get the rights to Firefly back. So you have to get their approval to make a TV show. But I thought we did talk about that. Maybe it just wasn't on Frame Rate. So good point. That's it for this episode of Frame Rate. Scott Wilkinson, thank you, man.
It's great to have you
be
here. Yeah.
Let folks know where they can find Home Theater Geeks or anything else you're doing online.
Well, certainly Home Theater Geeks is on the twit.tv network, twit.tv/HTG. I'm also answering reader and listener questions at Secrets of Home Theater and High Fidelity. The website is hometheaterhifi.com. I answer a question a week there, and I also post very technical, very deep articles once in a while. Up now is part 1 of how LCD TVs work, and I mean, I'm talking at the molecular level. So check that out, and certainly Home Theater Geeks, and whenever Leo's out of town, I'll be filling in for him, and happy to do so.
Excellent. Go buy the Scam School books so that Brian's daughters can eat something besides gruel, and you can come find us at twit.tv/FR. We stream it live every Monday at pretty much 3:30 Pacific time. You can find all the episodes on demand, twit.tv/FR, and email us, framerate@twit.tv. A small spoiler zone coming up. If we're not sticking around for that, though, we'll see you next time.
Silent breed is people!
So, Brian, after last week's episode, I disagreed with you about the phone call. I thought, no, I think this is fine. I think this is an interesting time to introduce it, and we could play that story out, and it'll be fun. After this week's episode, I 100% agree with you about the phone call. Like, what? What did you think?
Okay, here's the problem, right? The scene with the phone, he is desperate and lost, and he immediately, some stranger says, hey, man, we're strangers. Or he's like, can I come live with you? It's terrible here. We're totally screwed. And then meanwhile, that's the whole purpose of them showing up in the prison, is that so that they can get a brief respite from the outrageousness of the wild, where they can build their own little civilization and actually breathe a sigh of relief. So then more horrible crap can happen to them, and we have to freak out again. And the fact that we've never gotten that, we've never yet had an unclenching. We've never seen even. They've never sold us on the idea that the prison is safe. They've never sold us that they could build a little family and be okay. Instead, they do the opposite, which is in the middle of what should be their nest of safety. We see Rick losing his crap, crying, saying, I don't know who you are or where you are, but please take us in. And then, oh, by the way, I'm Crazy Pants Bananas. No.
Well, see, see, that bothered me less because you weren't on board with him being Crazy Pants to begin with. I was okay with that. So him losing it with the phone, I was okay with. Even the second voice, I was like, oh, okay, so they're going to make it be all of the dead people he knows. That's interesting. But then when they're like, okay, well, we'll see you later because this is Laurie. And I was like, what? You just, that's it? You revealed it? You kind of blew the whole part that I was into, the part that I wanted to get strung out, where he actually thought it was people who were safe, and he starts telling everyone about it, gets them excited. I was expecting Herschel to find that the thing wasn't plugged in or something, right?
Right.
And that could be a reveal, but
was it just me, or was it a bit much out of nowhere for them to just start this episode on the hunt for Michonne? Because, like, they ended last episode, like, I thought, like, wait, did we jump an episode? They ended with a full-on, like, see you later, here we go. There was no scene.
I know. I was okay with that. I'm smart enough to catch up and be like, oh, okay, so they let her go, but we all knew something's going on, and so they said she can't go, and they sent Merle out to get her. Like, I filled in the blank in my head fast enough. I'm like, all right, that all makes sense. I could see the governor doing that. I could see Merle being the guy for the job. That didn't bother me.
Yes. Okay. And okay, so it's a minor infraction. I am going to say a bigger infraction with the increased doughy wimpification of the governor and his little romance with Andrea.
What are you, the He-Man Women's Haters Club? He can't have a relationship? He can't find love, Brian?
It's not the governor. That's not the character. That's not what makes him one of the most
That's
compelling
not the
villains.
governor from the book.
It's a terrible character he's playing right now. I hate
But
the
you're
character.
going to love it when Michael Rooker shoves that knife right up in the governor's head, aren't you?
No, he's not going to. Instead, we're going to see a weird, there's... And by the way, what's with this unexplained immunity Michonne has where she's got invisibility?
Oh, no, that's just because she's covered in the gunk. She looks down at all the gunk all over. Remember, the split guts spilled all over her. That's what that's basically rediscovering and reintroducing that plot point. Is if you're covered in zombie guts, which nobody would like to be, the zombies leave you alone, and that's going to play out in a way to get out of something.
Well, the way that scene, and now that I'm replaying that scene in my mind, I totally see that's what they were trying to say. But at the time, I got the impression not that she was discovering that it was the guts that made her invisible, but that there was something more interesting that had all of the zombies' attention. And so I was like, what's this other thing going to be? And then there was no payoff scene for that, so that was weird. But look, here's the thing. Still on probation. Just like last week's episode, pulled down major notch, and I was like, I'm worried, guys. This week's episode was just good enough that I'm not willing to turn on the series, but you slipped a little bit more rope. I need you, guys, I need you to pick it back up. I need you to kill that stupid governor.
Last week's episode, I don't know if I mentioned this, but for me, last week's episode was sort of like, it's okay to have a breather episode. This season has been so good. This week's episode, I was definitely mad about the phone call. But I'm really starting to think, I just have to remember this isn't the book. And in some ways, I wish I'd never read the book, because I think I'd have an entirely different feel for the rhythm of things. Because what Robert Kirkman does so well is everything's safe, everything's not safe. Everything's safe, everything's not safe. And inside the prison, he's doing it differently, but it's still everything's safe, everything's not safe.
There is, okay. And keep in mind, all of my complaints, because I'm seeing some chatter in the chat room, and I'm like, it's not the comic book. You got to let that go. None of this are complaints about the comic book outside of I've seen a glimpse of what the governor character could be, and it's awesome. And I don't know.
But that's a complaint about the book, Brian.
Right. No. That is the one thing that I will admit is a complaint about it. However, my complaints are about inconsistencies of characters as we've seen them on the show, inconsistencies of storytelling, and missed opportunities. I hate the governor as he's being played now. Is there anyone who has just been watching the show who can look me in the eye on the internet and say, no, man, I think this governor is a very compelling character. He's complicated and interesting and surprising. It's like he's a wuss. He's a wuss and a softy, and
He's a gentleman, Brian.
No,
he's cultured.
He's a coward.
He knows good whiskey. He knows how to treat a lady and show her a good time at the fights.
He's a coward and doughy, and I'm not afraid of him. And even at this point, even if he does something terrible, I'll regard him as a petulant, angry child throwing a tantrum, and not as a force of nature to be feared. Which is, and again, that is just the fault of having seen the guy.
The governor doesn't bother me at all if I don't compare him to the book. I think he's a perfectly believable and fine character. He doesn't have to be like that kind of character. I understand your frustrations, but I think they're all pretty much rooted in, and you want the governor to be somebody he's not, Brian. You know, you just need to accept him for who he is.
Who he is boring and dumb.
Exactly.
How about that?
Wait, he's not dumb. He may be a little bit more boring than the governor we knew.
He's not dumb enough to see through Merle's lies?
He totally sees through Merle's lies. Are you kidding me?
Oh, really? You think he's just sort of letting him blow smoke?
He knows Merle. He gave Merle a look, and he doesn't want Merle to know he knows. There's a little thing going on there, I think.
Interesting.
Also, Merle's going to become the governor. Just saying.
Can I just say one thing about the governor?
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
If you watch him and think of Bill Pullman, there's a really strange connection there that I can't get over. I didn't seriously, I didn't read the book. I didn't read the series.
Oh, so you're the one. You're the one.
I'm the one, so I'm probably the one, at least one of the ones,
who was
anyways.
Foretold to us.
Yeah, he doesn't bother me, but his character isn't very compelling to me either. Like, I'm not.
All right.
If his whole thing is that he's supposed to be this, controlling this entire kind of subculture, which is kind of why he's the governor and everything, but he's supposed to have this kind of unavoidable power or aura about him. I don't really get that from him, and I don't know if it's an acting thing or if it's just the character that's being portrayed in the story. But
because he's a gentleman.
Yeah, I guess so. But there is little to be to fear in him, and I kind of get the feeling from the book that you get that a little bit more.
He's an entirely different character in the book.
Yeah,
and
very,
the
very
difference
clearly not the same character.
Right.
Yeah, he's like he's a smooth politician in the television. But like what was neat about the book was you had this populace that he was a ruthless, fear-inducing tyrant who created these games of blood sport to placate the masses, and it was obvious to the people who were in Woodbury that they were all terrified of him and terrified of his wrath, but they respected and found comfort in being ruled in this. They found safety so valuable in this chaotic world that they gladly accepted his tyranny in order to do. And that's a fascinating dynamic, and that's what made Woodbury a compelling organization to be this polar opposite of what we were seeing develop and flourishing in the prison. And we just don't have any of that this time.
All right. Well, next week, Walking Dead.
How many more episodes do we have this season?
I don't know, actually. Good question.
I have no idea. I mean, they're half seasons, so they're like, 7 episodes? So we got to be coming up close here. Then.
Yeah, we got to come very close.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for our spoiler zone. Thanks, everybody, for watching. As we mentioned, twit.tv/FR. We will check in again next week, right, Brian?
Yes, sir. And if the governor's watching, I always loved you, and I was just kidding about all that stuff. Please don't attack me.
He accepts you for who you are now. We'll see you next time. Kisses.
All right. Yeah, next time you watch The Governor, think of Bill Pullman.
Oh, no, I totally see it.
Do you see? Okay.
I'm ready to see
I was alone on that one.
Watch a virus.
But every time I see him talking with that kind of half smirk, I can't help but think Bill Pullman.